Hey everyone, how's it going? So last time we created our post schema, so it's finally time for us to insert our post or to create it because we're going to do so using this schema. So let's go back to our posts file, the API file which is in the roots folder, and what we're going to do is do the same thing we did up here with the user schema, but we're going to do it for the post schema as well. We're essentially including this post schema on the page for us to use. So of course this is called post schema. Oops, make sure you spell that right. So post schema. Now we can start using it, and what we're going to do is in here simply call post.create. So post.create, and inside there we're going to pass in the content we want to create. And I just realized we haven't actually created this content, so let's do so just above here underneath the if statement. We're going to say var post data equals, and just create it as an empty object, and then we're going to add some properties in there too. So we'll just say content is going to be request or rec dot body dot content, because we know at this point we have the content available to us, because otherwise we would have exited here. So we're including the content, but there's one more thing we need, and that's to get the person who posted this. Now you may be wondering how we're going to get the user who posted it, because we didn't pass it from the client. But the good news is we don't need that. We have access to it from the session. If you remember, if I just show you real quick in middleware.js, we access the session property, right? When we log in, we store the user in the session, so we can just access this to get the user that's logged in. That means we never have to pass information about the user that's logged in to these requests, because we have it on the server. So what we can do is just say posted by, which of course is one of the properties in the post schema. Posted by is just going to be rec.session.user, and we know we definitely have this, because if we didn't have it, then it would redirect the user back to the login screen. So let's take this post data now and just insert it. So put it inside the create function. So post.create, and then we'll just call one of our callbacks. So we'll say .then, because remember this create function, just like we did with the user when we signed up, returns a promise. So we can either await the result using the await keyword, or we can use the promise and just execute the callbacks. So remember, there are two. There are .then and .catch. Now the .then is called when this successfully completes, and then the .catch is called when something goes wrong in this. So what do we want to do if something goes wrong? Well, essentially we have a function to execute, right? So I've made an arrow function there, and this will be called if something goes wrong, and it's going to give us an error too when something goes wrong. So if it goes wrong, it will call this catch block, and it will pass in an error to the function that we specify here. And again, because there's only one parameter here, we don't need the surrounding parentheses if you don't want to. It's a simpler way to do it. And then what we can do, you just say console.log error, and then this will put the error down there for us to see. And then we can also just say res.send status 400, and this will just send a bad request status back to the user, so they'll see it in the console just like they did here. Okay. So maybe you want to change this later on and return a success message or something instead. You could just return a 200 and then pass some data back as well, and then you could maybe output some error to the user instead. So when they post it, you could just show a message there saying your post wasn't able to be submitted or something like that. So there's a couple of different options you can go down. You can handle the error a bit more gracefully, but for now we'll just put an error there and just say that it didn't return successfully. But what we can do instead is catch this error on the client side and still output an error message. But for now, this is fine for us. We don't have to get to that right now. So anyway, what we're going to do is put something in the then block. It's again going to be a callback function. So just put an arrow function in there. It's essentially just the code that's going to execute when this is done. And what's this going to give us? Well, it's going to give us the new post that we had, the new data that was just created. So we can just say new post. And again, I've got rid of the parentheses because there's only one parameter here, so we don't need the surrounding parentheses. So great, that's all we need really. Other than that, we just have to return the data back to the user. So we can say res.status, and then we want to say 201. Now, a 201 means created. If you just Google HTTP status, you'll see a bunch of different status numbers and what they mean. But I've got one right here I just pulled up to help explain this. I just Googled HTTP status for created, and we get 201 right there. You can click any of these links for more information. But essentially, if a request sends back 201, it means that something has succeeded and has led to the creation of a resource. So, yeah. If we get 201, it's just sending the signal that something has been created successfully. You could, of course, argue that maybe you'd want to send 200 because that is also a success message, but a 201 basically just a bit more descriptive as to what the success was. So anyway, we're sending that, but we also want to send the data, so we'll just say .send at the end of that and just put new post in there. So this essentially will create the post, and if it succeeds, it will send a 201 back with the data of the newly created post. And if it doesn't work, it will just catch an error and then send something back. But what we're also going to do though is get rid of this bottom one. We don't need that anymore. That was just to test with. So get rid of that bottom one, and we're good. Let's try this out now. So I'm going to save that. I'll restart the server, and I'll go back to here. Obviously, we're not going to see anything client side because we haven't done anything with that. In fact, I am going to log it actually. Let's go to here, go back to common.js. I mean, firstly, we want to uncomment this. I remember I commented that just to show you that it will send back a 400. So make sure that's uncommented again. And then what we'll do, instead of alerting that, I'm just going to console.log it. And we're going to look at the data that's sent back to us. So I'll refresh the page now, and I'm going to send something. I'll say, this is the first post. Okay, here we go. So I've clicked post, it's gone to the server, it's created the resource, and sent it back for us. So if I show you in more detail, I've just expanded it, and you can see we've got a content field right there, we've got created at, updated at, we've got an ID, we've got a posted by. Now, the very last thing I want to do in this video is explain this posted by thing. So if you remember in the schema, I told you that we used a type of schema.types.objectID, right? And we said that the reference is that it's a user. So I mentioned briefly before that Mongoose will populate this for us if it finds a object ID type, or rather, we have the option to. It wouldn't automatically do it, but we have the option for it to populate this field for us if we wanted. So what we can do is make it populate that. So if we go back to post.js, in this part right here, the then block, I'm going to take this new post that was created, and I'm going to tell it to populate that field. So I'll say new post equals await user.populate. Okay, so it's going to populate this, and the data we want to get it to populate is new post, which is of course the newly created post. And then we need to specify which field we want to populate. So we want to populate the posted by one. So we're going to say path colon and then posted by, like this. So it's going to populate the posted by field. And it's going to do so using the user schema, so it knows that it's user data, okay? And that should be it. Oh, we have one thing we need to do, because we use the wait here. Oh no, we've already done it. Yeah, okay, so I was going to say that we need to specify async there, but I forgot. We copied and pasted this from the register route where we did already add async. So basically, if we didn't have this async, we'd have a problem. So make sure you do keep this async before the function because we're using await in there. So anyway, let's give this a try. This should be good now. And you're going to see hopefully some different data, but we have an error, so let's see what that is. Await is only valid in async functions. Wait, I've said that this has the async one, right? But technically, the function is this function here is this one. It's not executing in this function. This callback is a function in itself, so we actually do need to specify async again, and we need to put it here. Okay, so we've specified that this callback function that's executed is asynchronous. Okay, so let's try that again. So we're good now, it runs. Let's refresh the page. I'm going to sign in, and then I'm going to submit a post, another post, and let's see what happens. So now, if I expand this, Can I expand it? Yeah, there we go. So I've expanded it, and it looks the same as before in the sense that we get all these fields, but posted by is no longer just an ID. Now it has all of the properties populated too. So we've got all this information that we can work with, and this is useful because we can use this user data to render it. For example, if we didn't have this and we just had the ID, when we're coming to output the posts, we would need to make another call to find out the user's name so that we can put it in, so we can write it in a label like that. So, yeah, that's where that comes in handy.